90% the mission, the game mode, the objective. What you're doing, everything you're doing is working towards that. You are focusing entirely on that, like a vast majority of the time, and everything else is veritably insignificant. Like the terrain is often inconsequential, right? Like the main area where you fight the caretaker, identical every single time. Essentially, gameplay wise, it never changes. It always gives you enough
Well,
space around the caretaker, and it's all in a dome. It's always just a dome with slight variance.
sometimes it does. Actually, I'm gonna. The only time it hasn't been like that was actually in the crystalline caverns, which is weird. When it had the massive fuck off crystal formations in that room, which means they weren't. It didn't. The game didn't really
Remember,
know
that
to
was a
remove
glitch,
them. Was it?
right? Well, they didn't want it that much. Remember, they tried patching it out, and I think they slightly have.
Yeah.
They were never supposed to get that bad. Probably because of that. But yeah, caretakers are always in big empty dome rooms. And then the other things, they're always just in other rooms, and they're like normal. They're fine, but they don't matter
Well,
because you don't do the
and you
stuff
know
in
what's
that room.
weird? But you know what's weird though is like conceptually, the hacking pods should actually be the best part of it though, because they can spawn anywhere, and they usually spawn in the bits of like the caves that have like are sort of naturally
They
formed.
spawn in the tunnels. They always spawn in the
So
tunnels.
sometimes, yeah, it does feel like they always spawn in the tunnels. Sometimes they don't, and that's why that's arguably one of the more interesting parts of it. Kind of.
Except that they're not though.
The problem is those things don't. The problem is things like that actually don't belong in enclosed spaces, which is why Salvage Shop is actually quite well done because like it's like half and half, isn't it? Like what, as in the mission is two halves, but I also mean the end part where one of them shouldn't be the same thing. But in general, when you're going to stay in the same place and defend something, it should be in a flattened area. Which actually they do kind of do that though, because the fuel pod can land in some pretty interesting places, like up high or like
the second part is always more interesting than the first one.
But but it's good that the uplink is in like a clean space usually. It's because those kind of things should be, and the rest of the cave is like quite natural as well, so it works.
This is why the mini mule gathering part is the only really good part, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, like the other part isn't bad, but like the mini mule is interesting because like the mining missions, like doing the objective is just a small part, like 30% of what you're doing, right? Like obviously you're doing that, but you're predominantly like getting around the terrain, interacting with the environment, fighting enemies, and that. Like it is ultimately a very, very, very small part of the experience. The rest is taken up by any events that occur during the cave or the cave's formation and the biome you're in. That is so much more prominent. Meanwhile, the biome that you're in a industrial sabotage changes nothing, and that extends identically to escort duty.
Yeah, because escort duty especially, but both of those missions, but escort duty especially, your traversal tools really don't matter. Or traversal. Some of them are good, like for setting up, like at the end, like platforms to put your turrets on, using the drills to take certain things out. But in terms of actual traversal, they don't really do much. And most of the other missions, like Mine Expedition, Egg Hunt, and like Point Extraction, they're all like exercises in using your traversal tools a lot of the time. There's always points where you really need to use them. I feel like Point Extraction is like especially about that. Like using your traversal tools is always like mass. You always use them in Point Extraction.
As much as you humanly can. It forces you to. With where they put the quarks.
Yeah, and Escort duty doesn't matter, and industrial sabotage it often doesn't matter. Really.
Yeah, like literally, that I think that is it. Because once again, oil refinery, huge. What terrain manipulating device you have, or the terrain you get in that mission, is incredibly influential to the experience.
That's also cool because it introduces. I tell you what's kind of weird about those two, like Escort duty and refinery. They both introduce their own forms of traversal, but the better one, you have more control over, and it's also only like one. Yeah, it's also like but it's also fun, and you also still need your traversal tools because those caves demand it. Well,
yeah, like I'm sorry, but Doretta, you should have been able to sit on it, and it should have had mounted turrets. Sorry, but that should have been the case. If they wanted you to, they expected you to sit there and like sit there protecting it. It should have given you that in an interesting way, right? Um, and they didn't do that. It's not interesting. It's incredibly boring. And your movements have no real effect because you have nowhere to move to. You're often either in a tunnel or you're in a small room which you don't need to explore. Like there's no reason for you to do anything in that room, right? There isn't. Maybe nitrate if you need some. But with each room of a mining mission or an aquatic room or everything, you have to go into every room to find something that your objective there. It could be in any corner.
But
Same with the eggs. They could be anywhere.
see, this reasoning lines up with why elimination is often quite lowly, like rated quite low.
Probably, yeah.
Because traversal tools aren't that important on elimination. Like, except like the grappling hook. That's it.
It is the same in that you don't explore. The same with the escort duty and point extraction. There is no reason to explore because you just go where the objective is, right? I do think obviously elimination is a step higher. If anything, because the boss fights are just better. And
the environments are like natural. They have caves for the cocoons, but they don't have cleared out spaces for them. You know, sometimes they do spawn in tunnels as well. Sometimes they do actually spawn in tunnels. You know?
It is variance on the terrain, and plus they move around more, forcing you into other terrain or just to use the terrain better. Meanwhile, Caretaker and Omoran, they give you a dome. You sit there. You literally, in both of them, cannot move for the entire time and survive easily. Like pretty easy. It's often done in escort duty, but even in point extraction, I think it was a monkey or maybe Revan just showed it literally destroy the two arms.
Revan strategy. Yeah.
Literally, like it's so fucking obvious that they're both terrible. When you can literally sit there and all you do is point, click, and shoot, and you can complete the mission easily, right? Like, you literally do not need to move for most of it. And it's so fucking terrible.
It was really damaging, I think, as well, because they put a lot of effort into them. But this is why I respect them taking some time, because I do think that there's been a lot of planning going on. Not necessarily for like far future. I just mean for like, I feel like they probably planned season 4 quite a bit more so than usual. Because you look at Industrial Sabotage and Escort Duty, they're two. It's like they had an idea for like an experience that they wanted to make, but they suit like a level in a video game, not a game mode. They more suit a level in a campaign that you would only play it once every time you go through the campaign. They don't suit a game where you play the missions over and over again. But they just got caught up in the idea. They forgot what made all the other missions so good, but they didn't because of Refinery being developed at the same time as Escort Duty. So why did they make one more similar to Escort Duty?
I genuinely don't think they knew what they were doing right.
It's like it's in them, isn't it? It's like it's in them, but they don't think about it. But they still have it. They just forgot.
They never truly understood how vital the constant need to explore and move around the caves are. Like, and I mean explore, not be guided upon, because that is point extraction and escort duty. Not point extraction. The fucking industrial sabotage. Both of them, you are given the cave where your objectives are in, and that's it. Like literally, you put it in industrial sabotage. You walk into the main room, the caretaker's there. Then you're literally guided by fucking threads as to where you need to go, and there's that thing. You do that. And it's like, other than mining nitro, there is nothing you do, right? There's no reason to explore the nooks and crannies and the other interesting rooms or stuff. You just go where you're told, then come back. Meanwhile, mining egg, anything, you explore like every nook and cranny because there could be your objective there, and there could be your objective there. Like, you don't have to look for your objective in either of those two game modes. It's just bad. It's just bad.
Yeah, man. I do respect Industrial Sabotage a bit more in that department because they knew they were making something different. At least I think they were more aware of that one because it was so inherently set apart from the other missions. Not saying that was already. Not saying that was a good idea. I just feel like considering the response to escort duty. No, I'm just saying considering the response to escort duty, if the next mission type they made wasn't like something as important as industrial sabotage, it might not have been so complicated. They might have actually gone for something simpler. But it was elevated to this certain level. And it would have been way better, by the way, I think, if escort duty didn't exist as well. Industrial sabotage would actually be a lot better, I think. It could go either way. It could almost be a more sore, or even more sore of a thumb. But
yeah, but like Oil Refinery proves you don't need simpler. Oil Refinery was anything but simple. You just need terrain and biomes to be important, and for you need to have a objective reason and just general reason to explore the caves, right?
yeah, and like hearts that like escort duty biome doesn't mean shit unless it's a rad zone, in which case Dotty's just going to get hurt all the time. That's it.
Then you only ever experience the inconveniences. Like that's it, and it's just.
It clears out a room and changes the terrain type to like armor and bed.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is that events, like how differently they're treated in those two game modes compared to all the other ones, right? Like if you get can you even get an event in Industrial Sabotage first of all? Because I swear to God, I never recall.
Jesus, yes, you can get machine events. You can get bosses like the Corlock and Betsy. I've fought definitely.
Where do you even fight them in that though?
The cave, the branch out areas. Although the Corlock I had was in a tunnel. That was some shit. That was fun though. Actually, I failed, but it was like so fucking ridiculous. It was pretty bad though. That was a badly placed Corlock. Like I had to like go on this like journey through like tight like tunnels. Like, I had to clamber around like through like little. Just really tight areas to find like the healing pods every time and get back to it. It was terrible, but it was like a lot of fun because I was just sweating.
Well, I'm not surprised to call it spawn there because it's not, it's like I 100% sure that they block any event spawning in the caretaker room, right? Have you ever had one in there?
No, I think I might have had I feel like I've seen Betsy's in there.
Maybe Betsy's a pretty low.
Doesn't get much space. Yeah.
So she's a pretty small event, but yeah. So you've got like, and you can't put them in spawn room, can you? You can't put events like that in spawn room.
Well, you could. You could. I'm only saying the reason I'm saying you could is because I've gotten machine events in the spawn room of salvage ops and eliminations. That's happened to me before. So,
all right.
Multiple times.
Yeah, but it's not likely though, is it? Really?
You probably shouldn't put a Betsy or a Corlock in the spawn room though, or a prospector even.
Like 2 rooms for like events. So events like fuck all, and events in escort duty are, if anything, annoying, right?
Yeah, you don't want to do them, or you either want to find them first or come back to them after. You know,
they are not treated same. They are treated as an inconvenience or like a mission extender.
It's incongruent with the other parts of the game. It pretends as if those encounters aren't important, as if they're not some of the best things.
Yeah, because the events generally they are what rewards you for exploring. Kind of like you would probably bump into them anyway, realistically, unless it's like a quark mission. When sometimes you would maybe be done, but you haven't got in the room yet. But like they're just kind of your nuggets of thank you for being in this cave and having found us. Here is this fun thing that's now going to occur. Meanwhile, in those two, it's you were gonna come here anyway, and now in escort duty, you're gonna have to come back to do us unless you want Dottie to die, right? Like those are your options, and it's just either that or you drilled ahead, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just they're just so anti good for this game. Like in other games, in more mission-based things, they'd probably be alright. I would imagine, right? There'd be pretty good boss fights.
They don't embrace the good part, like the stuff that's already good about Deep Rock. The events that we still get actually, and that's the thing. The meteorites kind of interesting because meteorites will land wherever the fuck they want, even in industrial sabotage, which is pretty cool actually. Actually, like that. I've had them land in the caretaker room, so that's pretty neat. They sort of break that barrier, which is why I still like that we get like events.
They used to keep landing on Dotty, didn't they? Keep remember that it keep using to land on Doretta, so they had to like.
I'm so annoyed that I never experienced that.
Yeah.
I even got like 2 meteorites in an Escort duty mission, and it didn't. Neither of them hit Doretta. I think that was around the time it could have happened as well.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just so bad and so wrong, and I really hope that they know that, because like obviously people are very 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 outspoken about industrial sabotage, right? Everyone fucking hates them, and that's common sense. Escort duty, considering it has the exact same issues, right? Exactly the same issues.
Unfortunately, I think it's literally just because
Robots.
No. I think escort duty is because escort duty is actually. There's 2 reasons I think it's not as bad for a lot of people. One of them is just the fact that everyone knows they can just dig forward to find like events and shit, right? Or if they want to clear things out, which I think, first of all, I think if you don't do that, like if you like can hear a Betsy, and you don't dig ahead first, it's kind of dumb. Or you could bank on Doretta running into it, but that's
with that thing though, drilling ahead is actively retrospectively making that game mode more fun.
Yeah, it does, and it also makes it easier as well. But that's the thing; they're actually not that hard. They're easier than industrial sabotage. That's the thing; they are. But for most people, especially where you can just you just stand on Doretta, and it's like these big nice tunnels that make combat sometimes kind of boring actually, but easy.
Very boring.
Yeah, and then like the end part can get overwhelming, but there are also ways to set it up to make it easier, especially if you have like the right classes or the right builds, so you can really just make it easy. Yeah. So there's a bit of that, and the digging ahead, which I don't know how to feel about that.
Well, I think it's the thing with which is the funky thing about industrial sabotage escort duty. In escort duty, you're always gonna pick crowd clear, right? Like it's always it is always crowd clear. Like there's always a crowd.
You do kind of need a little bit of you need something that has at least good DPS to take care of the rocks. Obviously, you need something that's not going to run out of magazine size before you destroy a rock. Because if you need to reload, like especially if you can't even destroy one of the rocks before you need to reload, you're fucked during that section.
Yeah, but even then, you're not that fucked overall.
Which is, by the way, that's like every Sabotage build that doesn't use explosive reload. You have to reload before destroying a rock.
Yeah, and good luck using like any primary really trying to kill them. I mean,
as driller,
flamethrower will do like nothing.
Yeah,
corrosion does pump, right?
Well, such buzzword as Ice Spear will one shot them. I think
you would not want to use Ice Spear on all those fucking things.
No, you can't. No, I'm not. That's what I say.
No, but yeah, I mean, it was a cool point in time when the game mode first came out, where being a driller was a great boon. Like you felt like the game mode was handed to you on a silver platter, that you were the grace of God. And then you realize actually you don't really need to be needed because you can just break the tips of things. And then they patched out C4 in the oil shale, which I still to this very day. You can say that what they did to overclock patch for that short period of time was like anti-fun, anti-players. No. Getting rid of saturating oil shales was anti-fun, anti-players. That was them saying what we had in mind for this game mode is more important than the fun you have on it. That was anti-fun, anti-players, anti-speedrunning.
Which is a bit weird for them. And I would say they haven't really done anything anti-fun in a while. And even the last thing they did, which was only arguably anti-fun, they even they came back with like a actually well-rounded solution feature. That was the promotion thing, the bug.
Yeah, that people called that anti-fun and anti-players, which it kind of was, but obviously they knew that, and then they got back to us with the solution. But they absolutely fucking obliterated the quicker option to getting oil shale that you would only have access to if you were a driller and willing to use satchels, just for the sake of they didn't want you doing that. They didn't want it being that quick, I guess. Even though you sacrificed 2 of your C4s to do it, and you had to play driller, it was the biggest fuck you to players, which I'm just thinking back on it now, right?
Well,
Like,
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking there's no reason for the bugs to attack the Retta when it's not moving.
Yeah, it's not making sound, right?
It's not.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Omeran, obviously, and it is moving. It's like the drill. But when it's just, because you don't. I always thought like, they should have it like so it's shielded during those sections. Not necessarily that. She could still get damaged, but I don't think the bug should target the Retta. They should be targeting you during those sections. Obviously.
Yeah.
That makes way more sense to me. I don't know. They've got no reason to. But then they even made like specific voice lines for like the Retta's under attack for those mini swarms that happened when she stopped. They're not even full swarms. They're just like the Retta attacks like swarms. They're literally for the Retta, which is a bit weird. A bit silly, if you ask me.
Yeah, man.
Those
two
fun.
Man, they're just. Yeah.
No, I'll never hold it against you that they're the worst because they are the worst of the bunch.
Yeah.
I've no inhibitions about that at all.
That's slightly interesting because if we break down like why we kind of see him that way, like you can start to see why, eliminations are slightly less preferred, and so are repair missions, like your mini ones, because those are the ones where at one point in time you don't really need to explore and or interact with things.
Well, they
right?
are sort of in a middle ground. I think that's like on the spectrum of how much like things are to industrial sabotage. They should only go as far as elimination and salvage op do. That's the limit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they would probably seem a lot worse if we didn't have escort duty and industrial sabotage, though.
Yeah, well, because I think,
and they wouldn't actually get worse; they would just seem worse to a lot of people.
Yeah, the final stage of the mini meal missions are essentially just escort duties. Just sit there, fight a horde in a contained area where, even though you're technically not protecting anything, you're protecting yourself in a contained area, right? It cuts off fleeing as an option, which is the point of Diretta as well. You can't just flee, you need to protect it. So it was really just a beta version of that, which is interesting considering no one liked that. So I don't know why they went ahead with the alpha.
Yeah, they made more things like the hacking pods as well. Yeah. Some things do feel like a bit of a cop out, or just like that's not the thing that you should have like repeated or followed up on.
Once again, I do think the
prospector though was definitely
the meteorites are the best version of that gameplay feature. I think having 2 of them so you can just choose one to lighten your load. Plus, I think they sound and feel good. Like it was a really the meteorites are just genuinely really good.
Well, that's good. I'm always willing to compliment them, but I think it's kind of weird that it always comes from the new shit instead of them going back and changing things.
Yeah. Like that is always what I think. It's like
this is the best stuff. Yeah, but do you know the bad versions of it still exist though, right?
Yeah. First of all, no more of this. This gameplay mechanic is overdone at the very minimum, but now has been perfectly done.
Like you should repair. For example, you should repair Haxi before it goes down. And even then, like the rock crackers, obviously they have health and you can repair them. But once they actually deactivate, that meter of you like reactivating them actually stays if you break off while doing it. You don't have to do it all in one.
Nice.
So it's like if Haxi, if you but it's like because Haxi it's just a button press, but which means obviously you can't interrupt it. But then it should be instant, or it should be like the rock crackers. Actually, Haxi wouldn't be that bad if it was instant, but then it would sort of be a bit pointless. It'd be so easy to repair. Then it'd be too easy.
Haxi, honestly shouldn't have been a protect, especially since you can't even see Haxi's health bar, right? Like that's dumb as hell. With Haxi, it should just be like the oil refinery ending, where it just breaks like maybe a couple times depending on players and hazard. I think that would be just it
was like it could have been like the rival software like fighting back. or something. And
Yeah.
it would interrupt Haxi sometimes, and you would have to go in and do a quick.
And
you would have to go in and do a quick hacking mini game or something to get it back on track.
That might be a bit much, but I'm thinking more all shell because not all shell. The liquid refinery thing, because whenever they break, it's not because of enemies attacking them, and when they're broken, they stop spawning enemies.
Well, hold on, isn't it
part.
supposedly like canonically is enemies like breaking them, right?
Yeah, they are attacking them, but it's not them at breaking them, right? They're guaranteed to break in certain places.
I know the game just does it, but isn't it supposed to be that the enemies did do it though?
Yeah.
Isn't that the idea?
And which is why I think they still attack the pipes once they're broken, because it's supposed to like give that illusion. But
they knew that it would be quite annoying if it was just based on the enemies themselves. That meant if you ended up getting overwhelmed, then they would just break more and more pipes like exponentially, and you would just it would be like an uphill battle, a Sisyphean task. Exactly.
They knew you wouldn't be able to repair the pipes if they keep spawning enemies, so they stopped. Which was something that when they did the hacking pod, they just didn't give a shit.
Why do they forget these like things? It's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I genuinely think that they never thought about it enough. They never realized what they were doing. They were just like, okay, we'll give the players a chance. Or we just thought they just thought it was natural, so they didn't think about it. And then when it comes to this, they just came with a different conclusion. Like I don't know, it's just backwards and confusing, and it wouldn't be an issue because they're still working on the game, so they can go back and change it. Right? They can make hacking pods, maybe do what we thought, but just break automatically, or maybe if no enemies attack it, then it can just keep going. But either way, when it is broken, it stops spawning those enemies, right? Because it should. Either that, or it's like a normal, not normal event, but maybe more like a machine event where once you started, you have 2 minutes or whatever, right? And you will have a giga amount of shit thrown at you constantly.
A timer wouldn't necessarily be good either for a mission objective.
No. Even though it kind of is sometimes, right?
Well,
like one mini meal.
Yeah, but that's true. But even in examples where it is like literally a timer, that it's still actually influenced by other factors like being in the zone and also the number of players being in it, either speeding up or slowing it down. It's not literally a timer.
Until it is after.
I'm not necessarily defending that either. I'm just saying it's not exactly the same. But the thing is, it's not great, which is why it shouldn't just be a timer. It's because the salvage shop example isn't necessarily good either. So I don't have a timer.
Well, there are timers in normal objectives.
What?
Well, it's technically part of it in point extraction and the mini meal mission. You have a minute and a half to survive.
Well, yeah, that's true. And kind of. Only because it's not a normal extraction where you have to go to something. I don't know.
And I still find it weird that you have to because this is another weird discrepancy, and I like this in the oil refinery. You press the button and you get to leave. The drop pod's immediately coming down. Like it goes up and then the drop pod's coming down. But on point extraction, it goes up. You now have to wait a minute and a half, and then the drop pod comes down.
Point extraction is supposed to. I really appreciate point extraction's existence, though, because it is just so clearly just meant to be just a balls to the wall thing. You've got to be quick, and you've got to survival. Survival is equally as important as getting the mission done. As in,
it is like a test of your abilities to scan the caves and complete the objective quickly, right? It is like, you can take your time during a Morkite mission, right? Obviously, you get more swarms, but you can steadily chug along. And it's those skills that you obtain by doing that. And I guess the egg hunt, but egg hunt is more you can prepare yourself for swarms. Then train you to deal with a quark missions, right?
Yeah.
A quark missions is essentially the same thing. Find the things, mine them, deposit them.
The problem I have...
no fuel, and you can't spend too long doing it.
The problem I have with point extraction, though, is that it makes events really difficult to do. And the reason why I think that's bad is because the events actually just add on to the challenge, which in some ways is fair because you get the reward out of it. But it's not like it's an increased reward over a normal mission. So, in the
No,
context
yeah,
of point
I
extraction, the events should actually be somewhat of a break almost. They should stop like enemy spawns.
agree. Yeah,
They should be
it
more.
should.
They should give you a window to do them, and you're still in point extraction. It could even be a bit jarring when you have to return to the point extraction gameplay. It could even, you could even have that be a part of it. That it's like it was almost karma while you were doing the event, and then you have to return to what point extraction is. And then, but in that sense, it's still better than those other two, industrial sabotage and escort duty. Even though like events aren't really encouraged that much, it's still a very simple objective.
Yeah.
Which is a very important thing.
And I think in an ideal world, they would tackle it by
No,
doing
it's not
that.
perfect, but it actually does serve a purpose that no other mission type does, though. So it's got that going for it.
I don't know. It's this kind of stuff that they need to analyze, break down further than we just did, further than we ever could. They need to figure out why the old stuff worked, why the new stuff doesn't, what doesn't work about the old stuff, what does work about the new stuff. All of that. They need to break it down to a fucking science before they try and add a new one. Before they attempt another game mode, they have to understand what makes a good one and not just try again, hope it succeeds. Because chances are they'll make another stationary boss, they'll make another unfun game mode, which doesn't encourage exploration or doing events. Because currently, that's their pattern. Fucking it up.
And once again, much like the issue with seasons, the issue of those two mission types is that they were based around a concept. More well, I mean, you have sort of gameplay concepts, but they were based more around a concept than anything else. I'm not sure what the other thing would be. I guess making a good mission. Sounds kind of jokey, but I mean it. Like they were trying to make a mission. They were trying to make this concept come to fruition, rather than trying to make trying to make a good mission with a cool idea attached to it.
It feels like they're more like, I don't know, like let's go for like an RPG exploration, right? Like it's like a mission where you would get to kind of choose your own pathway through it, and then you kind of come up with your own ending, like more open-ended, open beginning kind of story. Or they force you down this hard narrative route where there is plot and progression and that stuff. That's the difference between these missions.
Well, this
the mining expedition, you create your story in those missions. But in industrial sabotage, they create your story, and your story is the same every single time, right? There is very little alternative to it.
Yeah, I don't know why I really like Rival Presence though, and just season 2 in general, because Rival Presence felt like them trying to make a really good mutator that featured the rivals. You know, what I mean?
It was a cool thing. First of all, it spiced up normal missions. I mean, because generally, well, even before you reach that room, things were a bit spicier because you're bumping into robots. But then that room being taken over by rivals makes it spicier, right? That room is now a rival room, and that's interesting. It changes things up quite a bit. It's like essentially it's a mini biome, right? It's a mini rival biome in that room. It's probably the better version of it than the rock box, right? It takes over a room.
Yeah, and also when you're just trying to make something good, when you have a game that already has like a lot of good shit in it, it's already like an inherent task you're set with, is making that new thing interesting and unique. You don't actually need to start with a unique and interesting idea. That's just part of the process of making something good, which is why I always trust them with the new enemies. Where it's like, part of making a new good enemy is making it feel different as well. So it's going to be a combination of them perhaps serving a unique role in combat, but also having a unique idea behind them, because both of those things matter. Yeah, the other shit, like Industrial Sabotage, it feels like it was entirely the cool idea first, instead of the cool idea being a natural part of making something good. It was making something cool. Everything good is cool. Everything good separates itself from everything else, but that's not where you start. You know?
Yeah, and hopefully they realize what everything else is first, right? Hopefully they looked at all of their enemies, and then they thought, instead of just thinking like currently, for all we can tell, their thoughts may have been ground grabber, pulls you in.
Well, this
Just because, and
exactly.
they came
That's
up with that idea.
I'll simplify that
Or
even further because we don't actually know how the pull thing works. But I'll literally just go with the stingtail. It's like, okay, so we need to make a new enemy. What about a ground-based grabber? And then, it should probably be a scorpion. And that's the right process.
Yeah.
Rather than
And then-
let's make a
and then that-
scorpion and then it's just like a badly made scorpion enemy.
yes and no though, because that isn't the right process. It leads to somewhat good results, but it's a bit shaky. A good process is that's the end bit. The first bit is at some point in there, do we need a ground grabber? Right? Let's look at all of the things we have in the game. Would that add anything? Yes or no? Then they come with yes, and then they make it a scorpion because that looks cool, right? Like they break down the game, they break down what they would need, what they have, what they don't have, what the game should probably add, and then with that they come up with some cool ideas, and then they make those cool ideas look even cooler, and then boom, slap bang in enemies. As it stands, I don't think we know whether or not they really cared about how well this fits in. So far, I think if it is more of a pull, then I think they did think about it.
Well, yeah, because
once
the
again,
premise is making things that fit in. It seems like, kind of.
yeah, because
Making things that will fit in at least in how they play, because these guys they definitely look quite different. I still haven't showed you though that actually I didn't save it. That's kind of stupid. Oh, things that I uploaded that'll work. The guy who found why is he not here? The guy who like had that the up-res image of the new creature of that one. It's not actually here. Oh, did you see this? Robot Getaway guitar cover. It's pretty cool. Mainly the actual chorus. Pretty fucking cool, isn't it?
gosh, I don't just like guitars. I don't find guitars cool sounding inherently.
That's like
not
that's like anti-human instinct almost.
not even close. Guitars are no way special than any other. Like, just a means to sound.
I'm annoyed.
I can tell because I think as far as rock and or metal, isn't the guitars essentially the only one that matters?
Or did I just like not? Oh no, that's something else. Oh dear. Oh dear.